Welcome to the new and improved In the Hot Seat, where every week we get together on Thursdays to take the latest in enterprise software news and put that in the hot seat and tell you what we think is hype and what we think is hot. Today, we got a lot of really interesting topics, and I should give one footnote. We're not going to talk about the Entropic Fable release today. We'll save that for next week because it gives us a week to actually use the thing and then come back and have some sort of an educated opinion versus a off the cuff. I would use that word, off the cuff. Yeah, I was thinking something else, but anyway. So today, the first story I'm really interested in this, and this is I say, all of a sudden we're seeing all these announcements of headless types of applications working in the AI world, and this one is an announcement this week from ZoomInfo about their general availability of GTM.AI, which is a headless GTM context layer for their intent data, which, obviously ZoomInfo has been around for a while, and I would argue they've always had the capability to be sort of headless because they connect into your CRM system. But now with this, headless layer, which gives you, an API and an MCP server, so you can connect in and use that with whatever sales development rep agents, or actually, I suppose we could still be using that with humans, that you have. So interesting announcement. What do you guys think about it?
Well, why don't we start with defining what you think headless means, Michael, and is it going to mean something down the road, or is it going to stay static?
So headless has generally accepted definition of kind of the headless horseman. You take the head off and then it is operational, but you got to put a head on to be able to talk to it. In other words, the UI is interchangeable, and the underlying application works with any of the UIs you connect it to, or can connect it to, I suppose. Does that work?
Yep. And do you see that evolve? Like when I look at what we're going to talk about today, I see sort of this evolution of we're moving from a thing that used to be a feature to something that's more focused on an outcome. And so, the pivot that ZoomInfo is doing is much more focused on delivering an outcome based upon, in part of their data asset, as opposed to just selling the data asset.
I mean, I think that, yeah, there's some investment there. And I would say the other piece is that it's an acknowledgement that most companies have started some sort of a movement towards, using that data inside of another application. Now, like I said, to be honest, they've done it with CRM for a while, but having this new layer that lets you connect into the context layer for whatever type of agent you might be using on the other end of it is interesting and, functionally useful, because again, you can use that, intent data to help establish and drive your sales development activities.
It also seems like what they're really trying to do is sell a whole body of trust here, i.e., the SDR trusts the agent trusts the MCP layer, the MCP layer trusts ZoomInfo.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. And the other thing I would say is that it just elevates, again, the same problem that you're going to see in any sort of business application. If you can't provide the context to the agent, then you're not going to get the outcomes that you're looking for. And in this case, you want that intent data to help provide context for the activities that your sales development rep, team, agent is doing, right? And also maybe an acknowledgement that most UIs aren't very good. I don't know.
They are
That's
pretty
just
much doing the same that we figured last week. Well, strip of the UI, be available where the people are working. This is basically the concept, the idea behind it. Well, and the solution that they are providing. I mean, with that, they are well, basically within everybody else's application, which is not that new because, I mean, it's what they did before, right? Now they added, well, the models, so they are in Flavor.
Yeah.
They're in OpenAI. They are maybe one day in Mythos, if that ever gets released.
Yeah, but Thomas, the one thing that the more I think about this, the more I think that the one interesting piece of this is they're not really saying here's a whole functional application that you just put a new UI on. They're saying here's the middle of what you need for an application.
Yeah.
That's the context layer that you combine with your own data to do whatever. And that is kind of different and something I haven't seen data providers go down the path of much lately. I mean, I guess you could kind of argue that, and once the data's in the CRM, it's kind of the same thing. But
on the other hand, for ZoomInfo, there is quite a risk in there because, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now they are selling seats, right? And that doesn't hold true anymore. So what is not mentioned in that release is how do we go on? Well, how do we go on making you pay for it? Or the customers probably come with the question the other way around. So why do I still need to pay for seats? Because the data is the endpoint, not the user anymore.
Right.
So that'll become quite an interesting one as for everybody else around.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, what's a seat? Does it work the same? Are your agents a seat? So you have to have a license for each agent that interacts with the data.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean that.
I
don't know how you manage that, especially if you're trying to build some predictable model as a company, because then I'm also have a consumption-based model for my agent that I'm paying for. I'm probably paying for something that's a platform that provides my other data, and maybe I'm paying for a CRM that actually is holding all this and making it actionable. And now I'm going to pay for seats for it gets very complicated very fast.
Yeah.
The thing that I found interesting thinking about this as to whether it's a company pivot in general, because ZoomInfo is one of the few publicly traded companies in this space, and its level of profitability does not line up with what I would think a data business would have. It's very low, and their stock's at like $2.50 or something like that, and it has been for a while, and its growth is actually going down. And so to me, I'm wondering if this is a sort of an example of companies that are getting weeded out of a situation where generative AI can create the information that you used to have to curate.
I mean, maybe, but I sort of wonder a slightly different take there is that there's a couple of things at work. One, their overhead in the back end is still pretty high because they can, you can hoover up, you can scrape some of the data, but they're also buying data from a bunch of different providers and aggregating it. And so they're a data aggregator, and the cost on that must be higher. And then the second thing I wonder about is this intent data space commoditizing? But once you kind of move it back to headless and you're just adding it as a context layer as input to another process, it kind of does sort of seem like a commodity to me, right?
I mean,
I don't know what their pricing model is, and as Thomas says, that's going to be an interesting one to discuss.
It almost seems like they're trying to become a utility, and the utility you price as a meter.
The problem there,
you need everybody to use it.
The problem with the utility idea in the data business is that electricity generally works the same way, whereas data could not be any more volatile. And so if you don't trust the data that you are subscribing to, and in an agentic world subscribing to without potentially a ceiling to what it is you could wind up with on your bill that month, you might be buying an awful lot of data that you can't count on automatically.
Yeah. I mean, it'd almost be that's a good argument for there should be some sort of a tie into outcomes, right? Now, how you do that and how you get agreement on that brings us back to that pricing discussion that we've had a few times on here. And I don't know what that answer is, but it does sort of make you think that perhaps that model needs to be more oriented towards, is this valuable or not, and what's the value?
I mean, they clearly vanish into an infrastructure layer, and they need to have an answer for that one, in order to not be made a feature of someone else. This is what they are facing right now.
Yeah, well, and if you start to think about data providers, I mean, there are a lot of data providers out there, and ZoomInfo they've aggregated a bunch of different companies, and then they also buy data, so they aggregate more data. But if that gets to be too expensive, you could manage this in a different way, or you could get a lot of that data in a different way, maybe. So is there really a moat there? I don't know. Because I mean, they've relied on having more data than anybody else. That's always been the argument, right?
It seems like the AI aggregators are going to be suffering to some degree from the increasing value of AIs and the increasing performance. So if the AI will aggregate it for you, why do you need? I mean, it's another way of approaching headless, I guess.
Yeah,
that goes back to the data quality. Is that it'd be one thing if you were aggregating it really well and AI didn't do as good a job, but if you're not doing that good a job to begin with, and AI can do it as bad as you can, but it's a fraction of the price, then now you're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, data quality is always a real issue when you're talking about intent data, which, honestly, in a lot of businesses, that drives into a lead gen system, and you're not buying the lead, you're buying the data that helps you build a lead or a prospect, right? So it's a little different process too. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Also, this commoditization, that's actually a real issue to watch, I think.
Well, what's our next topic, Michael?
Well, we got to do the thumbs up, thumbs down first. We still need to get those paddles, don't we? But I mean, what do you guys think? Is this hot, or is it hype?
Well, it is kind of.
He's a neutral. He's a neutral.
Yeah, so slightly up.
You'd never make it in the Roman Colosseum, Thomas.
Yeah, it's like cut off part of his
head.
On.
Same with you, Steve.
If it commoditizes, they need a meter.
Yeah. Fair.
Well, they need to provide more than just this. So the move is in the right direction, but they need to tell more about what's next with it, and how the moat, basically, how to defend it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment, Thomas. Is what is the moat, and also demonstrate the value. What, is this still as valuable? Although I will say, just as a matter of course, I see a lot of things moving headless that make a lot of sense to me, because the agents in a lot of cases do become your UI layer, right? So, in a lot of applications, moving towards a headless type activity makes sense. So. All right. Well, let's as Pete tried to get us to go already, let's move on to the next topic. So this one, I'm actually really intrigued by this. So Asana, project management software, announced that and unveiled a product suite, I guess, that is combining work management for humans and AI agents in the same system. And Asana is a widely used project management system. So, interesting that that they move this way, and obviously you guys know I have this point of view of this is we're moving to a digital workforce and a hybrid workforce, having the ability for a work management system to actually become an operating system for all of the workforce, the hybrid workforce. To me, that's a very important move, and one that I've been looking for a bit out of other vendors. What's the, how do you go at this? And frankly, a little bit surprised that you haven't seen something like this from maybe a Microsoft or somebody. What do you guys think?
For Microsoft, this is probably too mundane, because they think they are doing it anyways. Because what's Asana doing? So they are trying, like Zendesk, for example, they are trying to become the governance layer, the control plane however we want to call it, with choose your
Yep.
buzzword, for
Yep.
some part of the enterprise value chain. They are
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
value chain.
Yeah.
In-
Yeah. The work, right? The outcomes.
Yeah. To that extent, they are just moving up the food chain and are nibbling at Microsoft's heels. Well, it's a small nibble, probably.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I mean, I've been talking about this year, and governance is the thing, right? Governance built in is the thing, but
governance.
how you come at it, and can you do it with one system, or is it going to require a few different types of things to come together? That ends up being a question, I think.
Yeah. To finish that one, the good one there
I'm not
is
sure how it deals with accountability either. I.e., how do you do that? If you're really going to have governance, then you
does?
also need to be able to go.
Yeah.
This is what caused that problem. If a problem arises,
I mean, from a work management standpoint, to me, that's logical, right? If I have work that's happening in a project-based environment, and I want somehow to coordinate that work, having a governance plane that does provide you that human agent team view, that makes sense, but it's not a complete governance solution either.
No, it seems to stress workflow over intelligence. I.e., it's really saying we need to pull the workflow in together, and that's not something that requires higher levels of AI or anything else. It still needs to flow, and maybe they're right.
Yeah. I mean, it's also not only Microsoft. You have Monday, we have Atlassian, and well, to smaller extent, Smartsheet. And from a workflow perspective, where they are now nibbling as well, they being Asana, well, there's this service now in the background. So this is
well, and I mean Trello and a bunch of other players out there too, right?
So this is quite a bold move without having the full foundation. So they too need to protect their area. What I like about it is the messaging. We are talking about partnership, man, machine, man with machine, and not machine replace instead of man.
Yeah.
Although they are the examples that they bring in their release, so the customer testimonials are more about machine instead of man. So this probably,
and I mean that ends up being the conversation a lot. But I think you're right. The intersection of managing a workflow that's hybrid is, in fact, not an easy thing to think through right now with the tools that are available, right? So, I mean, I like that was the part that resonated with me too. Although, we talk about it as a sort of governance, and it is a part of governance, but it's only a part of governance. That's my, so if somebody came in with a governance plane that was a full solution, I don't know, right? I mean, then what's the moat?
Yeah.
Pete, what do you think? You look contemplative there.
Huh? I was just thinking how I think we're starting to understand just how work, whether it's a machine or a human, is language based, and once the infrastructure starts to understand that or respond to that, then you could start to see these industries collapsing. Like we don't need 12 versions of this thing that manages like what this bot or whatever agentic AI is going to do is work on information, which is the same thing I'm doing. And so we need some sort of contextualization layer, world model, what that defines what these things mean and allows us to act on them, whether I'm a human being or not. And I think all of these things that we're talking about keep pointing toward this movement toward sort of the next level of simplification, if you will, of the sort of the substrate that we just take for granted now, that we now have to sort of make into an infrastructure layer. in a way that we haven't done before. Before, a data mart was good enough, and this was good enough, and that was good enough, and now it's not to accomplish what it is we're trying to do. When you're trying to look across an enterprise or look across an ecosystem of companies and their partners and so on to do something beyond. So anyway, I think that this is sort of the beginning of a lot of this sort of, we'll be doing this contextualization discussion for a while, and then there'll be fewer and fewer companies that are still have a reason for being, because maybe it's the Microsoft that did it good enough, and I can't get rid of all the other Microsoft stuff I have, and so I have to use their crappy implementation of whatever this thing is, just like all the other crappy implementations of all the other stuff that they do, and because you just can't get rid of it, you know. So we'll be back to that discussion.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What's the verdict?
Well, and again,
Hotter-
we've lost another sponsor probably there with my comments on Microsoft.
Microsoft's gone as well. No Salesforce, no Microsoft. Man,
come on. At least let's say good things about Asana. Maybe we can, go in. Anyway. So what do you guys think? I mean, is it hot? Is this interesting?
I think this is hot because I think they genuinely have some connectivity, and I think their governance vocabulary is actually a real thing. Now, whether the workflow is actually the bottleneck or something else is the bottleneck is an open question, but that's going to be proven organization by organization.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm giving it
you're a thumbs up. That's good. Thomas, what are you? Oh, Pete. You're a thumbs up. Yay.
It is a thumbs up.
That's
Hey, are you sick, Pete?
Well,
that's
my
what I
point
was
is
thinking.
You can't argue against, increased intelligence, like, so these guys are sort of going in the direction you would need to go in if you wanted to stick around. So I can't argue against it, whether they'll be around 10 years from now as opposed to, 2 years, which I think is what we're talking about here. Thumbs up for that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
fair.
I again don't make it into the Roman Stadium. I think wait a little longer. So I think this is a not very aggressive move. It's rather defensive. I think it's also a good move because if they are managing to become the governance layer for their domain, it's good. The downside is, if not, and this is a big if, whether they are able to get there because the competition is good as well, then they are getting kind of the next summary bot, of which we already have a bunch.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. I'll go with the tot, but slight tweak in that, because for me, this is one of the areas that I have been looking at around hybrid workforce and how you manage hybrid work. So I think from that perspective, having a system that lets you look at a combined view in whatever, workflow activity you're looking at is valuable. I guess the part where my thumb starts to shift is that idea of governance and how, like, is this governance? This is work management, no question. And that's a part of governance, but it's way from, a long way from what a full governance solution would look like. So, I think it's positive. And I think if you're managing a hybrid work team and you want to manage the work, you don't have a lot of choices right now. Good.
It works only if you're already in Asana. If you're not, then Asana will not get there.
Well, I mean, unless you're looking for a work management system and where else can you look? I guess Workday has something, but I haven't seen another vendor announcement. Maybe I just missed it, but I haven't seen another one that talked specifically about hybrid team work management. Yeah. All right. Well, we got time for one more quick hit, so I'll bring up this easy one. That's the Salesforce Contentful acquisition, which, by the way, is another headless move too, right? So I do think this is, I'm talking about the product, not any of the people making the decision. That it is a headless move into the content space, and I think it acknowledges that, you know, companies like Contentful that have gone all in content management and built out a really robust system. To me, it's a good acquisition from that perspective, because Salesforce certainly didn't have a robust content system. I mean, Thomas, what do you think?
That's a definite one. So I mean, one of the things where Salesforce really had a gap was structured atomic content, and this is exactly what an agent needs. Exactly that, and the ability to deliver the atomic content to different destinations for different purposes. Now they can.
Yeah.
So this is a real closure of a gaping hole in their offering and their story. So, well, not much more to say.
No, but I mean, from the standpoint of being able to connect into a full picture of the enterprise knowledge, right? I mean, we know content has exploded over the last 10 years. So that, to me, that part does seem like a real benefit. Steve, what do you think?
Well, and it also strikes me that they've got customers talking about it in a pretty positive way, which, you know, we've seen a lot of things that we know are announcements. This is one where they've got somebody going, yeah, this really works. And, you know, some of these things are already generally available. So it looks like a good move on their part.
And I'm sure there's a good overlap in their customer base too, right? That there was certainly, both from the standpoint of a lot of Salesforce customers already have Contentful, but also there's an exposed part of that Venn diagram that isn't a Salesforce customer that they could go after. So from both perspectives, probably not bad. Pete, what do you think?
Well, I don't want to agree with Thomas, but I
that's like a good sub note, right?
I do, but especially to the extent that this content thing turns into context. I think content is sort of like we got to just get that stuff squared away so that we can get on to the ontology of how this data works with each other, and there's a higher level of intelligence in there. But the one-liner I wrote down as you guys started this topic was just keying on the word headless, and so my quote was, Salesforce is just trying to turn itself into the Doonesbury Asterix.
I like it, and there goes another sponsor. No, I mean, I think from the standpoint of headless, I mean, honestly, I think all enterprise applications have got to move in that direction, because the agent's the head. So, I mean, and a combination, maybe the human's the head a few times too, right? But
maybe they also find a better term for it.
Well, maybe one that sounds less violent. I don't know.
Well, I always think about headless chicken.
Yeah.
Not because of the violence part, but because they are running around in that direction.
Exactly. When was that ever a good thing?
I mean, it's a good thing if you're getting ready to cook the chicken.
Yep.
I'm just saying. But see, you have to remember, I grew up in the South where there were actual chickens and people took their heads away to cook them. So I've seen that process before. I could tell you that whole story, the traumatizing story of my childhood pet chicken, but I won't go there. So.
I think I have the same story.
Probably. Most people that lived in the South didn't realize that their kids' pet chicken was actually dinner. At least the kid didn't realize it.
Playing with dinner, Don't play with the food.
Don't play with the food. All right. I think that's probably exhausted on that topic. What do you think? Hot? Not? Sort of? Pete's a yes. Thomas, you're a yes.
Finally, I made
Look,
it into
we
the
all
ring.
agreed. Yay, that's amazing. I don't think that'll happen again for a while.
Well, of course, I would be quite concerned if I were a Contentful customer without having Salesforce so far. But Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guarantee you better have somebody at the door ready to answer, because somebody from Salesforce is going to be knocking on your door real
Yep,
soon.
they will be coming.
No question about that. All right. Well, I think that's probably all the time we have today. So thanks everybody for joining, and again, lively discussion. Look forward to next week, and we'll definitely add in the Entropic release for next week to see how we're thinking about that after we've had a chance to use it. So thanks everyone. We'll see you later.
See you.